Hello everyone, this is Iran Talk, and in this video I'd like to take a look at the truth about the Roman Empire. The primary objective of this analysis is to assess the influence of immigration on the genome of the imperial era Romans. Information will also be provided on the genome of italics during the Iron Age. I will also feature an analysis of a 2019 study that took a look at the genetic history of Rome since the Mesolithic up through the modern era. What you'll be able to see here is that the immigration of Levantines into the Roman heartland had a significant impact on the genome of the imperial italics, which was far different from the genome of the Iron Age italics. And this sort of immigration was not only restricted to the center of the Roman Empire, which in this case was Italy, but was widespread, as another study from 2023 showed that the Imperial Roman genome was widespread across the empire and even went as far as the Balkans, particularly what are now the countries of Serbia and Croatia. Another study from 2023 will be utilized here to prove that these migrations had somewhat of a dysgenic influence on the intelligence of the imperial era Romans. Now, without further ado, I'd like to begin this analysis. To begin, the 2019 study was titled Ancient Rome, a Genetic Crossroads of Europe and the Mediterranean. And you can see that the abstract says ancient Rome was the capital of an empire of 70 million inhabitants, but little is known about the genetics of the ancient Romans. Here we present 127 genomes from 29 archaeological sites in and around Rome spanning the past 12,000 years. We observe two major prehistoric ancestry transitions, one with the introduction of farming and another prior to the Iron Age. By the founding of Rome, the genetic composition of the region approximated that of modern Mediterranean populations. During the imperial period, Rome's population received net immigration from the Near East, followed by an increase in genetic contributions from Europe. These ancestry shifts mirrored the geopolitical affiliations of Rome and were accompanied by marked inter-individual diversity, reflecting gene flow from across the Mediterranean, Europe, and North Africa. The key takeaway from this abstract is clear, and that is that during the imperial Roman period there was a shift towards the Near East, whereas by the medieval period there was another shift towards Europe. Thus, Italy has seen many genetic transformations throughout its history. Here is the chart from which the samples were taken from across the province of Lazio, where Rome is located, and you can see that these are from all across various time periods, and then the historical events are listed there, and so are the genetic events. So I won't get into this in detail, but you can see for the genetic events there was an increase in steppe-related ancestry during the Iron Age, and then there was substantial shift towards the Eastern Mediterranean and the Near East during the Imperial Roman period. Then you can see that there was a shift towards Europe, especially Northern and Central Europe, during the late antique period, and this continued especially during the medieval and early modern periods. Now, to illustrate this reality, you can see that beginning with the Mesolithic, the population was very close to Western hunter-gatherers, and then during the Neolithic, you had a shift towards Anatolian Neolithic farmers. By the Copper Age, you had an uptick in Western hunter-gatherer ancestry, and by the Iron Age, you had ancestry coming in from the steppe, which is very interesting. By the Imperial Roman period, you had a rise in Near Eastern ancestry. In late antiquity, you had a rise in European ancestry, and this continued during the medieval and early modern period until you get the modern Italians, who are mostly a mix between all these populations. And this is well illustrated by the PCA, so you can see that the shift was significant from the Iron Age to the Imperial period, and then back to late antiquity, the medieval and early modern period, and finally modern day Italians. Thus, you can clearly see that immigration played a major role in the changing genome throughout history of the Italian people. Now, to further illustrate this reality, you can see this chart, and what's clear is that the Copper Age was mostly inhabited by Anatolian farmer-like people. Then the Iron Age had a mostly European profile, particularly a Central European profile. Then in the Imperial period, there was a shift towards Near Eastern ancestry. And then you can see during late antiquity there was a shift towards the Central European population. This continued during the medieval and early modern period until the present day, in which case all populations became mixed. Here you can see that this reality is again well illustrated both by the PCA as well as the ancestral shifts within the population. So you can see that during the Imperial Roman period there was a major Eastern Mediterranean and Near Eastern shift. This became less during late antiquity, with the Near Eastern aspect entirely disappearing, and then during the medieval and early modern period the population was largely European. And what's also evident is that ancestry during the Iron Age was mostly of European origin. What is also interesting is that the modern day ancestral tests done by 23andMe can pretty much pick up these shifts throughout Italian history. But what you should note is that there is some overlap here with some of these components, such as the Iberian, the Balkan, the Southern European, and the Italian, or the Northwestern European, the French and German, and the British and Irish. Thus, these shifts in Italian history are well reflected by modern DNA. Another interesting thing to note here is that there was a study in 2023 titled Intelligence Trends in Ancient Rome: The Rise and Fall of Roman Polygenic Scores. Now, to get into the gist of this study, you can see that the main thing here is that there was a major decline in IQ or intelligence during the Imperial Roman period, which is very interesting, and this is primarily due to the migration of Levantines into the Italic heartland. And the intelligence of the Italians during this period is well encapsulated by this chart. So you can see that the IQ was lowest during the pre-Iron Age period, then it was at its peak during the Republic. It declined significantly during the Imperial period, which is very interesting, and then it went up again during late antiquity, almost reaching the peak of the Republican period. Then it declined a bit during the medieval period, though the range was much less. And then contemporary Italian IQ is very low when compared to the Republican period as well as the late antique period, which is very interesting, and it's also less than the medieval period, and actually falls in between the Imperial Roman and late antique period and is fairly close to the medieval period. Thus, these results are evidence for the decline in the intelligence of the Italian population since the Republican period. What's also interesting to note is that Middle Eastern ancestry, as attested to by another article from 2023 titled A Genetic History of the Balkans from Roman Frontier to Slavic Migration, which shows that this sort of ancestry was not only restricted to the Roman heartland but was widespread across the Roman Empire. For this reason, it's evident that the Roman Empire was largely a multicultural state which had this sort of Levantine ancestry across the entire empire. Now up next, I'd like to take a look at the genetic origins of the Italian peninsula since the Iron Age up until the early modern period. The evidence I will be presenting is from Davorsky's Global 25 calculator utilized through the Wahoo database. I will also be providing images from various historical eras of Italian history to illustrate my point. Now without further ado, I'd like to begin the analysis. Now here are the source populations that I will be using, and you can see that there's an Indo-European Yamnayan steppe source, there's an Anatolia Neolithic source, a Western hunter-gatherer source, an Iran Neolithic source, a Caucasus hunter-gatherer source, a Lawan Neolithic source, a Morocco Neolithic source, a South Asia Bronze Age source, as well as a Siberia Neolithic source and an Ethiopian Neolithic source. Up first, we have the results for the Iron Age italics, and you can see that they were a European population which was on average 62.9% Anatolia Neolithic, 28.0% Yamnayan, and 9.0% Western hunter-gatherer. And what's especially interesting to note is that they have no non-European ancestry, and the samples were from Ardea, from Bovil Ernica, from the Republican period, from the Prenestini tribe, as well as from Rome during the Iron Age. Thus, these results attest to the European origins of the Iron Age italics. Now here is a bust depicting one of the earlier Brutuses, and you can see that he has a very European phenotype. Moving on, the same can be said about Gaius Marius, who again has a very European phenotype. Now here is Sulla, and you can see that he also has a very European phenotype. Now here is a bust of Julius Caesar, and you can see that he also has a very European phenotype. Finally, Augustus is the last of these ancient Roman elites, and again you can see he also has a very European phenotype. Thus, with these images, you saw that the ancient Italics were largely a European population with a European phenotype. Now here is an excellent AI reimagination of the ancient Italics, and you can see that they have a very European phenotype, and they seem to be a mix of the early European farmers, the steppe pastoralists, and the indigenous Western hunter-gatherers. It is also worth mentioning that some Italic tribes during the Iron Age and onwards who were not speakers of Italic languages, such as the Etruscans, also had a European genetic composition. As you can see that the various Etruscan samples we currently have are on average 63.9% Anatolian Neolithic, 26.9% Indo-European Yum-9, and 9.2% Western hunter-gatherer. There were also some Etruscans with Central European genetic profiles, so you can see here these ones were on average 48.9% Anatolian Neolithic, 40.1% Yum-9, and 11.0% Western hunter-gatherer. It is worth mentioning that these could be more admixed with the Gauls and other northern or central European populations. Now here are depictions of Etruscans, and again you can see that these ones have a very European phenotype. Moving on, here is a bust of an Etruscan woman, and you can see again she has a very European phenotype, and this is also very intricately carved. Finally, here are the last of the Etruscan depictions, and again you can see that these have very much European features and are not Middle Eastern or non-European in any way. Moving on, here are the results for the Romans from the imperial era. As you can see, they're on average 50.0% Anatolia Neolithic, 16.8% Indo-European Yum-9, 14.1% Levant Neolithic, 9.4% Iran Neolithic, 8.7% Caucasian hunter-gatherers, 0.5% Morocco Neolithic, 0.5% Western hunter-gatherers, 0.1% South Asian Bronze Age, and 0.0% Siberia Neolithic. What's evident from these results is that there was a major shift towards the Near East during the Imperial Roman period, as you can see that the Near Eastern component is quite significant here. In fact, the average for each of the Near Eastern components amongst these Imperial Romans is actually higher than most present-day Italians. As previously mentioned, this shift was brought about by the immigration of Levantines and other Near Easterners into the Italic heartland during the Imperial Roman period, hinting that there was significant miscegenation during this time frame. Now here is a depiction of the Roman Emperor Septimius Severus, his wife Julia Domna, and their son Caracalla. Septimius Severus' son Geta is actually striked out of this picture, and this was done by Severus' other son Caracalla. Again, here you can see very non-Europid phenotypes, though keep in mind that Septimius Severus likely did have a bit of Italic ancestry. Nonetheless, he was mixed, as was his two sons, who are of mixed Levantine and Punic descent. In fact, his wife Julia Domna was from Syria. Now here is a bust of Septimius Severus, and you can see that he has very non-Europid features, though nonetheless still West Eurasian. You can see a significant non-European phenotype here. Moving on, here is his son Caracalla, and you can see again he also has a very Near Eastern phenotype and not a European phenotype. Now here is another member of the Severan dynasty, and this is Elagabalus. And he was from Syria, and you can again see a very non-European phenotype. Finally, here is the last of the busts, and this is of Philip the Arab, and again you can see a non-European phenotype. Philip was also from Syria. Now here are the results for the medieval Italian as well as the early modern Italian samples. You can see that they were on average 51.9% Anatolia Neolithic, 25.6% Yum-9, 10.5% Neolithic Levantine, 6.3% Iran Neolithic, 5.2% Caucasian hunter-gatherer, 0.4% Western hunter-gatherer, and 0.1% Siberia Neolithic. Now with the medieval and early modern Italians, you can see that there was a shift towards Europe. Nonetheless, the Near Eastern ancestry was still present at varying frequencies. Here is a medieval Italian manuscript, and you can see that the features here are mostly European, though with somewhat of a Near Eastern shift in one of these individuals. Here is an image of Leonardo da Vinci, and you can see a very European phenotype, so he probably had less Near Eastern ancestry, though keep in mind that there's some recent research that was done which showed that his mother could have been a Circassian slave. Thus, while Leonardo likely reflected the phenotypic ideal for medieval and early modern Italy, nonetheless he was likely not of purely Italic descent. Finally, here is Michelangelo, and you can see that he also has somewhat of a Near Eastern shift, though again he was mostly of Italian descent and he likely had no more than 15 to 20% Near Eastern ancestry as he was from northern Italy. Now up next, I'll be taking a look at the genetic origins of modern-day Italians, including related populations such as the Maltese, and this will be done to give you an idea of how much European ancestry modern-day Italians have compared to the ancient, medieval, and early modern Italics that were analyzed before. Up first, we have the results for the modern Italians from the northernmost part of Italy, and you can see there on average 57.6% Anatolia Neolithic, 37.4% Yamnayan, and 4.9% Western hunter-gatherer. The sample sites for these Italians are Aosta Valley, Bergamo, Venezia, which is Venice, Lombardy, Alto Ridge, and Veneto. Overall, these results prove that the Italians of the north are a European population. And as you can clearly see, no Near Eastern influences were detected. Moving on, here are Italians from the northern part of the country, though not as north as the others analyzed. For these Italians, you can see they're on average 59.3% Anatolia Neolithic, 35.0% Indo-European Yamnaya, 2.5% Western hunter-gatherer, 1.8% Caucasian hunter-gatherer, 1.1% Neolithic Iranian, 0.3% Morocco Neolithic, 0.1% Levant Neolithic, and 0.1% South Asia Bronze Age. Thus, with these Italians, you can again see that they're mostly of European descent, though they have a bit of foreign ancestry when compared to the previous ones. Again, however, their non-European ancestry is at a minimal. These particular modern sample sets are from Emilia, from Liguria, from Piedmont, and from Tuscany. Now here are Central Italians, and you can see they're on average 56.5% Anatolia Neolithic, 29.3% Indo-European Yamnaya, 5.4% Levant Neolithic, 4.8% Iran Neolithic, 3.5% Caucasian hunter-gatherer, and 0.6% Western hunter-gatherer. Thus, with these results, you can see that the Central Italians are mostly of European descent, though they have more foreign ancestry compared to the other samples analyzed here. And these modern sample sets are from Lazio, Marche, Molise, and Umbria. Now here are Southern Italians, the first batch that I will be taking a look at, and these are on average 53.4% Anatolia Neolithic, 25.6% Indo-European Yamnaya, 9.1% Levant Neolithic, 6.0% Iran Neolithic, and 5.9% Caucasian hunter-gatherer. Thus, with the Italians analyzed thus far, it seems to be the case that the further south you go, the more Near Eastern ancestry they have. And with these results, you can see more Near Eastern ancestry. These Italian clusters are from Abruzzo, from Apulia, including Greek samples from Apulia as well. Here are the results for the most southern Italians with the exception of Sicily. These Italians are on average 50.8% Anatolia Neolithic, 22.7% Yamnayan, 12.4% Levantine, 7.7% Iran Neolithic, and 6.5% Caucasian hunter-gatherer. Thus, with these results, you can see that the Levantine, the Iran Neolithic, and the Caucasian hunter-gatherer skew is even greater. These particular samples are from Basilicata, from Calabria, and from Campania. Up next, we have the Sicilians, and you can see they're on average 51.8% Anatolia Neolithic, 23.9% Yamnayan, 10.5% Levant Neolithic, 7.9% Iran Neolithic, 4.7% Caucasian hunter-gatherer, and 1.2% Morocco Neolithic. Thus, with these results, it seems to be the case that the Sicilians are very close to the other southern Italians analyzed here, though nonetheless they seem to have more Morocco Neolithic ancestry, which is absent in all other Italian populations. Despite this, however, their Levant Neolithic and Caucasian hunter-gatherer ancestry is a bit lower than the other southern Italians. Another population from Italy are the Sardinians, and they're unique as they're mostly of early European farmer descent. So you can see they're on average 81.8% Anatolia Neolithic, 9.8% Western hunter-gatherer, 7.2% Indo-European Yamnaya, and 1.2% South Asian Bronze Age. Thus, with these results, you can see that the Sardinians are one of the purest populations in Europe as they're largely a population relict. Moving forward, here are the Switzerland Italian population, and you can see they're on average 55.8% Anatolian Neolithic, 37.0% Yamnayan, 2.8% Western hunter-gatherer, 2.4% Lawan Neolithic, 1.4% Caucasian hunter-gatherer, 0.4% South Asia Bronze Age, and 0.2% Siberia Neolithic. Thus, with the Swiss Italian, you can see a genetic profile that's very similar to the Northern Italians, though they tend to have a bit of more foreign ancestry, so they're closer to the second batch of the Northern Italians I took a look at. Finally, the last population analyzed here are the Maltese, and you can see they're on average 49.4% Anatolia Neolithic, 24.0% Yamnayan, 11.6% Neolithic Levantine, 8.4% Iran Neolithic, 4.0% Morocco Neolithic, and 2.6% Caucasian hunter-gatherer. Thus, the Maltese are also largely an Italian population, though they have more Morocco Neolithic ancestry compared to the other Italians analyzed here. As previously mentioned, the Near Eastern ancestry that was harbored by the Imperial Romans was not only restricted to the Roman heartland but rather was widespread across the Roman Empire. And next, I'll take a look at the samples we have from the Imperial Roman period from Croatia and Serbia. Here you can see the results for these imperial, Croatian and Serbian samples, and what's evident is that they have significant Near Eastern ancestry. So they're on average 54.2% Anatolia Neolithic, 32.4% Yamnayan, 4.2% Caucasian hunter-gatherer, 4.1% Lawan Neolithic, 2.5% Iran Neolithic, 1.5% Western hunter-gatherer, 0.6% Morocco Neolithic, 0.2% South Asian Bronze Age, 0.1% Siberia Neolithic, and 0.1% Ethiopia Neolithic. What's evident here is that the Near Eastern ancestry in the ancient Roman Empire was widespread across the provinces and was very much a pan-Roman phenomenon. Though nonetheless these samples have less Near Eastern ancestry compared to the Imperial Romans. Thus, it's likely that a large bulk of the Roman settlers were actually of Near Eastern descent. For comparison, here are the results for modern-day Serbo-Croatian populations. As you can clearly see, they're on average 47.4% Yamnayan, 45.8% Anatolia Neolithic, and 6.8% Western hunter-gatherer. What these results show is that the modern-day Bosnians, Croatians, and Serbians were not influenced by the imperial era samples that we have from the same region. Thus, much like Italy, there was a major turnover in the Balkans, particularly in Croatia and Serbia, following the demise of the Roman Empire. To conclude, this analysis took a look at the complete genetic history of Italy, particularly during the Roman period, but also afterwards. What was proven is that Iron Age Italy had a genetic profile which was of European descent, but by the Imperial Roman period there was an influx of Near Eastern ancestry, though nonetheless this was reversed by late antiquity, especially by the early modern period. Furthermore, it was also proven that this sort of Near Eastern ancestry likely reduced the IQ of the Imperial Romans, which has only been partially reversed in the modern era. A final thing to note is that Near Eastern ancestry was dispersed across the empire, particularly in places like Croatia and Serbia. That's essentially it for this analysis. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.